All right, so let me paint you a picture real quick. There's a guy, 33 years old. He's got a decent job, makes solid money, drives a nice car, lives in a good apartment. From the outside, this dude looks like he's completely got it together. His Instagram looks clean, his lifestyle looks comfortable. And if you asked him how he's doing financially, he'd probably say, yeah, I'm good. I'm figuring it out.
I know you just thought of at least one person, maybe more than one. And here's what actually scares me about this. Your 30s don't feel dangerous. They feel like progress. You've got income now. You've got stability. You've got some respect. So your guard is completely down. And that's exactly when these traps hit the hardest.
So why do men with genuinely good incomes end up financially empty by the time they hit 40? What are they walking straight into without anyone ever pulling them aside and saying, hey, watch out for this? My name is Jason. I became obsessed with money and wealth building before most guys my age even opened a brokerage account. And I've watched friends do everything right on paper, good jobs, promotions, relationships, and still end up with nothing real to show for it at 35. That pattern has a reason. And today, I'm breaking down the 5 biggest financial traps men fall into in their 30s. Not the obvious stuff, the invisible ones. The traps that feel completely normal until suddenly they aren't. Nobody warned your generation about this. That changes right now. Okay, so here's something that honestly doesn't get talked about enough. Your 30s are actually your most financially powerful decade. The money you earn, invest, and protect in your 30s has more long-term impact on your wealth than almost any other period of your life. We're talking about the difference between retiring at 55 versus still grinding at 67, just based on what you do or don't do in this one decade. That's not motivation talk. That's just the math. So why are so many guys blowing it? Because the 30s come with a very specific kind of pressure that nobody prepares you for. You're not broke anymore, so you stop being careful. You're not rich yet, so you start performing like you are. You've got a real income for the first time, and the most dangerous thing about that isn't overspending. It's that overspending finally feels justified. And here's the thing that makes your 30s uniquely dangerous compared to your 20s. In your 20s, you knew you were figuring it out. You had an excuse. But in your 30s, you've got a career, you've got a salary, maybe you've got a partner, a lease, a car payment. Everything looks like progress. And that feeling, that I'm arrived feeling, is exactly what turns a productive decade into a financially lost one. The guys who actually build real wealth in their 30s aren't living like monks, but they understand one thing most men don't figure out until way too late. Looking successful and building wealth are 2 completely different games. And the moment you try to play both at the same time, you're already losing one of them without knowing it. Your 30s are either where wealth quietly starts or where it silently dies. There is no neutral. Trap number 1 is probably already happening to you right now. A $1,000 raise just cost you $180,000. Let me explain exactly what I mean by that. Most guys in their 30s get a raise and do the same thing without even thinking about it. The apartment gets upgraded, the car gets upgraded, the restaurants get upgraded. And none of it feels like a mistake because none of it feels like a decision. It just feels like life moving forward the way it's supposed to. But here's what's actually happening underneath that. Every dollar you absorb into your lifestyle instead of investing is a dollar that never compounds. That $1,000 a month raise, invested consistently at a conservative 8% return, becomes roughly $180,000 over 10 years. When you spend it instead, you don't just lose $12,000 a year. You delete $180,000 from your future permanently. And most guys in their 30s do this exact thing 4 or 5 times over the decade without ever running that number once. I'll be honest with you, I felt this pressure too. When the money started coming in, everything around me was signaling that it was time to level up. Nicer place, better car, keep up with where your life is supposed to look at this age. That pull is real, and it's specifically designed to feel like progress. What makes lifestyle inflation so dangerous isn't the spending itself.
It's that it locks you in. Your new rent is a fixed commitment. Your car payment doesn't negotiate. Your social circle now operates at a certain level and quietly expects you to keep up. Every upgrade narrows your options going forward, and you don't feel it tightening until it's already tight. The guys who beat this trap make one decision that most people are honestly too undisciplined to stick to. Every raise gets split, immediately, automatically.
There's a specific moment that happens to almost every guy in his 30s. You start making real money, and suddenly you become very aware of what you're driving, what you're wearing, where you're eating, and what your apartment looks like when someone walks in. Not because you're shallow, but because for the first time in your life, you actually have the ability to signal that you've made it. And that feeling is more addictive than most people admit. This is the status spending spiral. And it's the trap that hits hardest specifically because it feels like confidence. Here's what it actually looks like in real life. The watch that costs 3 months of investing. The car that's just slightly more than you need, but feels right for where you're at now. The apartment in the better neighborhood because you're at that level. The vacations that get posted because they signal a certain kind of life. None of it is reckless on its own, but combined, these decisions are quietly doing something devastating to your balance sheet that the Instagram version of your life will never show. There's a version of wealth that looks incredible from the outside and is completely hollow on the inside. I've seen guys pulling $120,000 a year with zero invested, 4 figures in credit card debt, and a car payment that would make your stomach drop. But their social media looks like a finance success story. Like what? That gap between appearance and reality is exactly where the status spiral lives. Here's the thing about status spending that nobody tells you directly. The people you're trying to impress with it are either doing the same thing and equally broke, or they're actually wealthy and genuinely don't care what you drive. Real wealth is almost always quieter than you expect it to be. The guys with serious money in their 30s are not the loudest ones in the room. Boring compounds. Excitement gambles. That's not just a saying. That's the entire difference between where 2 guys with the same income end up 15 years from now. One spent his 30s looking the part. The other spent his 30s building the thing. And by 45, you cannot tell those 2 stories apart until you look at the numbers. Status is rented. Well, there is one phrase that has quietly destroyed more wealth for men in their 30s than almost any bad investment decision ever could. And that phrase is, I'll start investing once things settle down a little. I'll start once I pay off this debt. Once we get through this move. Once the kids are a little older. Once work slows down. Every single one of those sentences sounds completely reasonable. And every single one of them is costing you money every month you say it. Here's the math that makes this impossible to ignore. The 30-year-old who starts putting $500 a month into a basic S&P 500 index fund, nothing complicated, will have approximately $745,000 by age 65 at an average 8% annual return. A 35-year-old who starts the exact same habit, same amount, same fund, ends up with roughly $490,000. That 5-year delay costs $255,000. Not because he made a bad investment, because he made no investment. He just waited. And here's what makes this trap so specifically brutal in your 30s. Things never actually settle down. Ask any 40-year-old if life got simpler once he hit his mid-30s. The answer is never yes. Your 30s don't bring clarity and calm. They bring mortgages, career pivots, relationships, kids, aging parents. The complexity doesn't shrink as you get older. It compounds. So the version of settled you're waiting for doesn't exist. So you'll be waiting for it at 35, at 38, at 40, and before you know it, you've been 5 years away from starting for an entire decade. The guys who build real wealth in their 30s don't wait for the perfect moment because they understand one thing clearly. Waiting has a price tag, and that price tag is not abstract. It's $255,000. It's the difference between options at 55 and obligations at 67.
Start now with whatever you actually have. Because the most expensive decision you will ever make in your 30s isn't a bad stock pick. It's another month of... This trap will hit you at some point in your 30s, whether you're single right now or not. And most guys don't see it coming until the damage is already done. Here's how it plays out. You and your partner are both working. Combined, you're pulling somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000 a year. That feels like real money. So naturally, your lifestyle starts reflecting that. Nicer apartment, because together you can afford it. 2 car payments, because together it's manageable. More travel, more spending, more comfort, because the combined number makes all of it feel completely reasonable. And then, one income disappears. I've watched this happen to guys I know personally, not because they were reckless. One of them had his partner lose her job during a company-wide layoff. 6 figures of combined income became $50,000 overnight. And because their entire lifestyle was built on both salaries with zero margin, they weren't just stressed. They were drowning within 90 days. Rent, car payments, credit cards, everything that felt manageable on 2 incomes became a crisis on 1. That's not a rare story. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that the average American experiences at least one significant period of unemployment in their 30s. It's not a question of if one income disappears temporarily. It's a question of whether your financial structure survives when it does. The guys who navigate this without getting crushed do something that feels overly conservative when both incomes are flowing. They build their entire lifestyle on one salary and treat the second income as untouchable wealth. Rent gets covered on one salary. Car payments get covered on one salary. And the second income, let's say it's $4,000 a month after tax, goes directly into a Roth IRA, a brokerage account, and a 6-month emergency fund until that cushion is fully built. That's not extreme. That's the structure that keeps you standing when life does what life always eventually does. Uncomfortable and drowning are 2 completely different situations. One you recover from. One you don't. The difference between them is almost always whether you built your life on a number that required everything to go right or a number that survives when something doesn't.
Every trap we've talked about so far is about building wealth. This one is about making sure you don't lose it. And this is the trap that hits the most disciplined guys hardest. Not the ones who are careless with money. The ones who are actually doing everything right. Investing consistently, avoiding lifestyle inflation, building real momentum. And then one single unexpected event, wipes out years of progress in a way that no investment strategy can recover from. Here's something most guys in their 30s have never been told. The number one cause of bankruptcy in America isn't bad investments or overspending. It's medical debt. Not recklessness, not ignorance. A health event. Something that could happen to anyone, at any age, at any fitness level. And yet most men in their 30s have zero financial protection against it because they feel too healthy and too productive for it to feel relevant right now. Let me reframe how you think about this entirely. You are not just a person. You are a financial asset. If you're 32 years old earning $70,000 a year and you work until 65, your future earning potential is roughly $2.3 million. That asset, your ability to generate income, is the foundation everything else is built on. Your investments, your savings, your retirement account, all of it depends on you continuing to earn. And most guys in their 30s have no protection on that asset whatsoever.
I'll make it personal for a second. Early on, when I started building, I had every dollar working, invested, allocated, moving. What I didn't have was a disability policy. And when I actually sat down and ran the numbers on what a 6-month health event would do to everything I'd built, it genuinely stopped me cold. Not the medical bills, the halted contributions, the compounding I'd lose, the years it would take to rebuild the momentum. That math changed my mind faster than any advice ever could. The actual cost of protecting yourself in your 30s is almost embarrassingly small relative to what it covers. Term life insurance runs most healthy guys in their 30s under $30 a month. Disability insurance typically costs 1 to 3% of your annual income. An umbrella liability policy covering up to $1 million runs most people under $200 a year. These are not significant numbers. But the gap between having them and not having them can be the difference between a setback and a complete financial reset. Building wealth without protecting it isn't a strategy. It's just a longer way to lose everything.
Here's what all 5 of these traps have in common. None of them require you to be stupid. None of them require you to be reckless. They just require you to be normal, to do what everyone around you is doing, to follow the path that looks like progress without ever stopping to check where it actually leads. Remember that guy I described at the very start of this video? Decent job, nice car, good apartment, looks like he's got it together. Now you know exactly how he got there. Lifestyle inflation ate every raise before it could compound. Waiting for the right moment to invest cost him $250,000 in real wealth. A lifestyle built on 2 incomes with 0 margin left him 1 layoff away from crisis. And 0 protection meant everything he did manage to build was sitting completely exposed. That's not a rare story. That's the default story. Your 30s are not a waiting room. They are the game. The decisions you make between 30 and 40 will determine more about your financial future than almost anything else before or after that decade. The guys who understand that early enough to act on it don't just end up richer. They end up with options. Real options. The kind that let you make decisions based on what you actually want instead of what you can currently afford.